Today I have got the great pleasure of chatting with Suzan from Raising a Wild Child, just to cover and give a little bit more information what parents, professionals will gain from coming and joining us on the Therapeutic NVR course.
Hi, Nicola. Really nice to see you again. And I'm really excited to do this course for everyone. So anybody that's done NVR before will be familiar with some of the principles. And so they do underpin a lot of the things that we will be covering in the course, but fundamentally it's coming from a neurodivergent and trauma-informed perspective. And so the Therapeutic NVR course is about making sure that everybody feels okay, really. And we come from a place where it becomes about mutual understanding, mutual co-regulation. And that works for both parents and the young people that we're working with. So coming on this course, what we're hoping by the end is having a real understanding. There's lots of things around what does low demands mean? Is it no demands? And when we do need to kind of put anything in place or put a boundary around somebody else's needs, how can we do that in a healthy way that isn't actually activating our young people's nervous system and their anxiety and making it worse? So hopefully by the end of this course, you'll have a real understanding of what's important to you, why it's important, why we are setting certain boundaries in our own lives, and it will be quite personal, and how we can do that in a way that means that everybody feels okay. So it helps you regain some of your just presence, all of you within the family, and understanding kind of your needs and everybody else's, and giving you some real practical day-to-day strategies of how to see those boundaries through and how to decide which are the ones. And we use the word boundaries and everyone goes, oh, PDA. And it's realizing just when it's important and when it's impacting the child and when it's impacting those around them, and figuring it out together, really. It's a process. It's NVR done as a relationship building, connection building, collaborative strategy with your child. It's about working with your child to see everything as a shared problem and looking for shared solutions and helping you implement that, while also helping you figure out what to do in the moment when things aren't quite going right, and going through what we call the pain barrier moments of, I really need this boundary set because their little sister's now not allowed into the kitchen. How can we make sure that everybody's rights within the family are protected without activating anxiety and nervous systems? And that's the crux of it.
And that's a big issue, isn't it? You know, that we can create low demand and minimal demand. However, when it impacts or siblings or others need to do something, and there may be volatility or other challenges, how parents go about it. And from what I'm understanding from you coming in and talking before in the PDA portal, which is the first part of the course that we're providing, but you're going to come and do the Q&A with people, is having that, finding that balance, finding that connection. So it's not saying no, completely, you know, no demand and the sibling can't. It's finding that neutral ground, isn't it?
Absolutely. And a huge part of it for me in this process is exploring as parents and as elders. And it's funny because I'm finding the word parenting now really hard, because actually we all know we're hard to parent because we're not children technically in our own minds, but we're always parenting here, and it's a big part of it exploring the parent's own journey and own fears around letting go, and knowing which demands actually are based upon their own idea of what things should have been like, and helping them through the anxiety of letting go a lot of that, and then knowing which demands do need to be in place for everyone in the family to feel okay. Because without addressing everybody's traumas and anxieties around changing the way we do things, everything we do is a sticky plaster and it's short term. We need a long-term sustainable way so that nobody feels like their resentment's building, that they're walking on eggshells or they're bending over backwards. But at the same time, making sure that when we are asking for things, they really are truly necessary, and knowing where that line is.
And the other benefit, and I'm really grateful because I think you and I both will have come across a lot of social media of help, and especially over special festivities, you know, help, you know, there's been these explosions, you know, feel I've got to call police or whoever because the young person is showing very physical volatility. But the benefit of the therapeutic NVR is, or going back really, is that the NVR could be quite rigid of it's got to be done this way, which doesn't necessarily work in an ND neurodivergent home, where there are lots of differences of how people see, hear, read situations. Is there anything that you could give around that, you know, how the flexibility can be more supportive within the ND homes?
It is fundamentally knowing your children very, very well and knowing when to use what and not using it as a sort of linear thing. But more than anything, it's supporting. There are times when people will have to call the police because they genuinely feel absolutely unsafe. But it's making sure that it's done through a relationship building, and it sounds really contradictory, but adapting the flexibility of building a relationship with your local police station beforehand, with your neighbours, explaining to people and helping people have a language and a way that they feel that they're not doing things reactively or out of fear, but it's a strategy that helps them feel in control of themselves. And that's the fundamental thing with therapeutic NVR, is helping parents really be able to control their own nervous system. So if, for example, they do have to call the police, and I have had that where I've had a child with an axe and they genuinely thought, I don't know what to do kind of thing. If you've built the relationship with your child and had the conversation before and done the reassurances before and helping parents throughout, if you're not letting your nervous system control what you do, if you're not calling out of panic, you can cradle the child going, I don't know another way, but I'm here whatever happens, and helping parents know that sometimes things have to be done because they really don't know another way, but that doesn't mean they have to be angry with the child. And that's really hard if your nervous system is activated. So if everything becomes much more of a planned strategy and it's done in collaboration with the child, and the talking would be in peace times about, look, if this happens, I would have no choice but to do this, unless you can tell me something else I could do. This is the best I've got, and I'd love to have a natural outcome for everything, but some natural outcomes are so disastrous that I can't let them happen. For example, if a child runs and you can't find them, you would be calling on the police to look for them, and I don't want to do that. And if I do have to do that, I promise I won't be angry, because the fundamental message that I believe differs between NVR and a therapeutic NVR is it's me and you against your anxiety, not you against your anxiety and us and the world. We are fully aware this is your anxiety, your nervous system is sometimes leading the way of your responses. We have a huge responsibility to minimize your nervous system being activated, and we take that responsibility. In the short term, when it is activated, we need to keep everyone safe. And so it's the messaging we're giving around the principles, and even if you have to leave a dysregulated child, what the work that's done before then, so that if you feel unsafe in a room with a child who's dysregulated, and as a parent you want to be there and save them and hold them, when you've done the work before about, if we have to leave the room, I will always come back, and just doing some of the prep work and helping parents know how to do that prep work.
Yeah.
So that it's about removing as much anxiety in the moment off parents, so that they're reacting from their brain, not their own nervous system. And we do that through being flexible with the strategies, with saying, look, here's your support network for the parents. Things like call your boss and say, we're starting this process, and for the next couple of weeks, I might be a little bit late, or anything that we find out the parameters and we work as much within them as possible, as opposed to just the child should just comply or the parents should just get over it, because we know that doesn't work. And it's damaging for all.
Yeah, absolutely. The just do. And then lastly, the last week when, in March, when we meet, you're going to support people with being able to plan and create a letter from the heart. Can you give a little bit more about what that looks like and what it is?
Yeah. So in NVR terms, they talk about this announcement where you set the lines and you're going to draw a line. And when I first heard of the concept, and this is anyone with ADHD will know, you hear the concept, and before you hear what they think of it, your brain's already gone, I know a good idea. Right? And so the letter from the heart, sometimes we don't ever even send them. And there's two things with the letter from the heart. What it really does, so it's breaking down, really, it gives you an opportunity in the first paragraph, in the first part of the letter, to really see the brilliance of your child, because sometimes you can forget when you're fighting every day, and then there's a war and you're in your own nervous system and you're stressed, you forget to see the beauty of it. So there's the first part of it is all about remembering even the strategies they're using, what it tells you about your child, tells you how much they're going to defend themselves, and it gives you an opportunity to say, I'm really proud that you really protect your need for autonomy. And so it gives that opportunity. And then it's the briefest moment of, if there's violence, it's calling things by name. However, the violence must stop, and we will do everything we can other than hurt or humiliate you. And that, even saying it out loud, can be quite cathartic for parents. And then we end the letter with a vision of the future, just a vision of hope, of what we see. And like I said, sometimes we don't even send the letter, but because the parents have processed, and part of the therapeutic NVR process before you get to letter from the heart is mapping every single behavior that's currently triggering your nervous system. There's no right or wrong about it. If it's triggering your nervous system, and then when you see that on paper, you go, I'm trying to put out an awful lot of fires. And the letter of the heart helps you choose the most important fire. And it helps you relax, knowing that the rest, either some we've parked or we're going to deal with another day. There are some we've decided to negotiate. But fundamentally, I'm only going to fight one battle. Or sometimes it's two battles, but very closely related. And it can be really, really cathartic. And on the other side of that, I've worked with somebody who told me the story of a young child in care who they did a similar process. And this person, when they left care, they had saved every letter from the heart, because it was the only time they got to really hear the positive stuff about them. It was the only time that they felt safe. And therapeutic NVR is all about creating safety. So even when we're talking, and I'm looking for a better word for boundaries, rules, whatever we want to say, it's the understanding that that message of children need consistency and you die on that hill. When we start understanding that the safety that's created by putting in a necessary boundary and remaining calm throughout it, that is how we create safety, by saying, look, whatever you do, it won't change my feelings towards you, and it won't change the boundary. And that's how children and everybody really feels safe. They'll push back against it, and they want to see, you're going to change the boundary, in which case you're afraid of me. You can't keep me safe, anxiety and behavior through the roof. And also that negative self-image when you think someone's afraid of you. Nobody actually wants to be scary, even though that doesn't seem the case. And the other side of that is, if I push against the boundary, will you react in like? Will you be angry back? Will you reject? Will you, even an eye roll can be seen as rejection and criticism, in which case you cannot keep me emotionally safe, anxiety and behavior through the roof. And so it's a way to help. The sense of safety is being able to hold the boundaries we've deemed important, and they have to be important. This isn't a way to set all boundaries, because parents go, well, if it worked for that, it might work for, that's not how it works. We always must maintain the balance between necessary boundaries for everybody's mental well-being and safety, and autonomy and low demand. And that's how we create the sense of safety, by holding a boundary and doing it calmly. And therapeutic NVR is about how to do that, really.
Fantastic, and thank you. And I suppose instead of boundaries, maybe guidelines, and that guidance.
Yeah.
And what I heard from you talking about the letter of the heart is, when there are a lot of challenges, it can be really difficult to see the attributes, or we can be taught that certain attributes are a negative. And we both spoke before this around, when we have a special interest and we just want to tell everybody, what do you mean? You haven't got the next 2 hours to listen. But that's an attribute. But society's made that it's to be two-way, and actually adding that and it's that flip, isn't it? Flipping what is an attribute versus what's perhaps, I don't like the word defect, but that defective behavior or stance is really important, and it can really improve esteem, can't it? And change. And just lastly, as a holistic practitioner, I'm a great believer in sending, when there's a lot of pain elsewhere, to send that unwritten letter. And everybody says, well, why? And it's like, well, you're allowing the body to, or the brain to sort of simulate and clear yourself of that resentment, that anger, and I really hear that this is similar, because it's giving you that opportunity, but with a much, I don't want to use the word better, but a better twist, because you're acknowledging, well, actually, they're really smart, to be able to create this, or they're really smart to put across this idea. We've got someone who's coming out with some amazing ways and ideas to be able to have large Lego sets bought for them.
Yeah, and it's incredible, and it's celebrating that, and it's reframing our opinion on pushing the guidelines, or pushing the rules, or pushing the boundaries, and the fact that we see that as a negative as a society, yet we all know that it's the rule breakers that change the world, and reframing this idea that not just accepting a rule. I give this example often of when my daughters were growing up. They had this thing where both PDA, and one of them came in and just switched the channel. And I said, how can you enjoy what you're watching knowing your sister's now upset? She's going, but I got what I wanted. Why would I be upset? I said, but how can you be happy knowing that she's now upset and sad? She went, but if she wanted it enough, she'd push back. And it was said in such pure innocence, in that, but this is just how I am. This is, and we've had conversations since about recognizing when other people don't feel able to speak up and all of that. And she was about 10 at the time. And my child is a very compassionate, lovely human being, but to her, and we've got this value judgment against getting everything you want. And I had this conversation with a parent who went, but society, but it's not nice. I went, who says? And he said, society. I went, what if a person that pushes for the maximum they want, and then they end up doing amazing things and becoming a millionaire and giving all their money to charity because of this attribute? And it's interesting, when this attribute is in our children, we find it repulsive almost, but when it's in an adult that succeeds and does everything. And we're the hardest to parent, but you don't get remarkable change wave makers from compliant children. And it's reframing what we're seeing, reframing those moments, those hot points, and reducing the anxiety and the value judgment around them, to help us sit in them. But if actually they're pushing against something that really impedes somebody else's quality of life, especially another child, we have to have the clash point. But when we don't see the clash point as hugely problematic, or telling of our child and how they're going to be awful humans or awful when they're older and what happens when they're older, and we just take them for what they are, then we can actually have discussions about them. And that's, I think, one of the most powerful parts of therapeutic NVR is really understanding the mindset and the neurotype and the difference in what we believe conflict is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you know, as you were talking and you were saying about the changes that have happened in the world, I thought of Rosa Parks. As you know, I get wary of, in case I've got names wrong, you know, if she hadn't stood up, or sat down versus really, didn't she, and said, no, I am not moving. She made such a big change, but in a non-violent way, and said no. And like you said, our children are making these changes, very powerful changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are the generation that will break the intergenerational trauma. And anytime it all feels too hard, it's knowing that's what we're doing. We're allowing them the space to be autonomous human beings that they have every right to be. And we're just there to guide them along the way so they don't get hurt and nobody else gets hurt in the process.
Well, thank you for coming in. And I think, you know, it's going to be an amazing journey. And just to add a few little bits, that people have got till January to watch it, because we both know sometimes something happens, you forget, and you may need to watch something several times for it to really dig in. Or if you're like me, I can read or listen to something, and then the 10th time I'm like, I didn't hear that bit before. So it's, you know, the support, your support, the information is there in people's back pocket to be able to refer back to. And if the Q&As are only available for people who come and attend the actual course, but we will be doing a transcript afterwards. And I think, that also, if you know, people join, I'd really, really, really strongly urge to download the Kajabi app, and then they can watch on the go so much easier rather than logging in. But that's my thing at the moment, really, a bit like audio. I keep saying to people, download Kajabi app, especially when people have been used to watching things via, say, Facebook, you know, have to log into something new, something different. So yeah, just thank you for coming in, sharing your knowledge and wisdom to support families and professionals to create peace and calm, and create calmer homes.
Thank you very much for inviting me in, and I'm looking forward to it.